Well, good evening, class. We're going to review exam number one, kind of go over the questions. So to answer any questions you may have had about the questions, and this will help you on future exams. All right, so starting with the first question. Question number one, it was a true-false question. Manipulative training is the process of skills development. And if you will go to, in your text, chapter 1, page 2, and that is right there on it. It says training is a process of skills development. Manipulative training is the use of tools and equipment. And so there's your answer to question number one. Question number two was there's usually a representative from the personnel department in attendance at the oral examination interview, and the interview is recorded. And that is going to be a true statement. That's on chapter 1, page 23. And if you're looking at the text, get to it. It's in the very back there, about the 1, 2, 3, about 2/3 of the way down the page. There's usually a representative from the personnel department in attendance at the oral examination / interview, and the interview is recorded. And so that one there gives you that answer. It's also further back in the text as well if you read it. Question number 3, the application process consists of first finding out when the application will be available, and second, finding out where it must be submitted. That is false. It would be when it should be submitted, and that was on page 14 of chapter 1, right-hand column. And if you have to read it very carefully, it's right there in the page. The application process consists of first finding out when the application will be available, and second, finding out when it must be completed and returned. Not where, but when. Question number 4. Excuse me while I scroll down through the exam. Question number 4. Bear with me. Learn how to use this iMac. Question 4. Personnel development programs are designed to train firefighters as high as blank ranks above the one currently held. The correct answer is 2, and that is in chapter 1, page 12. Question number 5, the selection process begins during, the answer is recruitment. And that would be chapter 1, page 13. Question number 6. The CPAT includes 8 sequential events. Which of the following sequences is correct? Not very many of y'all missed that. If you did, it's on page 19 of chapter 1. Question 7. The CPAT is a pass-fail test based on a validated maximum total time of, many of y'all got that correct. It's directly out of the text. Chapter 1, page 18. It's 10 minutes and 20 seconds. You know how I stress goals, developing your goals, developing an action plan to achieve your goals. So I've stressed that a lot. So when I ask what does the acronym SMART, S-M-A-R-T, mean, it is directly out of the text, and it's on chapter 1, page 21. Okay. I want you to place them where you can see them every day. Remind yourself what you're trying to achieve, and make sure that you're following your action plan to achieve it. If you really want to be a firefighter, it's very competitive. Those that develop their goals, develop an action plan, stick with it, usually are successful in their endeavors. Question number 9. If you were to ask the fire service professionals for the most important things the fire department must have, the items at the top of the list would be trust and leadership. Leadership is important, but that is not what we're looking for. It would be trust and support of the public. And I want to see where that's at so I can tell you That's going to be chapter 1, page 9. It's a direct quote out of the book again. It's a left-hand column, about a little less than halfway down the page. We got to have their public support. That's who we work for. Without their support, we don't exist. That's why you have to enter this any type of public service with a servant's heart. You got to remember who you're working for. Take care of your customers. Be consistent in what you're doing, and treat them as though they're your long lost grandmother. Always, no matter how trivial it may be to you, to them it's important, and you need to always remember that. Take care of business. You don't judge. You just go in, make their day a little bit better at that time, and then get on ready for the next call. Question 10. A level of certification is based primarily on education. I want to say that was a true-false question. The answer is false. It is not. Certification is based on training. We get certified as a firefighter, and there's a lot of training involved in that. Education includes memorization, specific pieces of information, developing an understanding of concepts and philosophies, developing powers of reasoning and judgment. So you're getting a little bit of an education now, I would hope. I like my coffee. I've told you all that before. And certification is training. So when you go to the fire academy, you're getting a lot of training. Yeah, you're getting an education, but you're getting a lot of training to get certified. Okay. And I forgot to tell you where that was at in the book. That is going to be chapter 1, page 2. Chapter 1, page 2. Question 11. This position is responsible for developing plans for meeting emergencies, leading to the development of operational concepts and orders, directing coordination with heads of departments and agencies and cities. It's going to be the emergency manager. Let me tell you where that is. That's going to be on chapter 2, page 38. See if I can catch up with y'all. Excuse me while I look in the book quite a bit. I know I'm not very friendly to the video. It's in the right-hand column directly under the emergency services planner and manager, and it's a direct quote. Okay, this position is responsible for developing plans, concepts, and more. You're going to find that your emergency planners, your emergency coordinators, EMCs, are very instrumental in a city developing their emergency operation plans. As we talk about doing risk assessment, allocation of resources, they work with the fire chief, the police chief, city engineer, the council, the city manager, and they identify those areas they want to allocate resources to, and then make sure all the plans and everything align so that the citizens get the best possible care they can during times of crisis. This one here, question 12. We talked a little bit about history. It's important that you understand the history on that. The Corps of Vigiles was the first recognized firefighting force. It was not. Remember, it was the Publica. And that's on chapter 3, page 49. Remember, they were slaves organized by Augustus Caesar. And it's right there, earliest known firefighting. Its first recognized firefighting force was organized in Rome, composed of slaves carrying primitive fire pumps. These firefighters were known as the Familia Publica. And remember, they weren't very well incentivized. So the next one to develop was the Corps of Vigiles. And what they were promised was after 6 years of service, then they would have their freedom. So you have to have the carrot and the stick, so to speak, to make them do that. Always the people are motivated by extrinsic qualities or extrinsic rewards. Question 13. Boston was the first fully paid department in America, fire department. That is not true. The first one was Cincinnati. That's in chapter 3, page 51. Boston was the first funded, fully funded fire department, but that doesn't include paying their firemen. That means buying the equipment, stuff like that, but it's still staffed by volunteers. Cincinnati became the first fully paid fire department in America. Again, chapter 3, page 51. Question 14, common denominator in conflagrations. Should have gotten this one, is combustible construction. If you remember, we're in the chapters earlier, it was talking about how the homes were built close together. They were made of old dried wood, and, cedar shingles and stuff like that. And so when one caught on fire, it just spread like kindling, like a wildfire. So combustible construction is the answer there. And let's see what page that was on for y'all so you can get it going. Chapter 3, page 61. Question 15, fire departments must manage financial liability and safety risk within 3 major categories. This, I think, was a multiple choice question. And it's risk to the community, risk to the fire department, and let's see, that is going to be on page 66. And the other part of that was risk to the emergency response, I believe. Let's see. So it was going to be page 66. Is risk to community, risk during emergency operations, like I said, response, and then risk to the fire department organization. It's on the bottom right-hand column. It's important when we get into risk assessment later on, knowing what the fire department's responsible for. Okay. (16) What FPA standard requires written risk management plan to be prepared by the fire department and is made a part of their operational policies and procedures? That is going to be NFPA 1500. You will always remember that because 1500 deals with safety. Some other ones that you might see later on are 1901 and 1710. 1710 is staffing, 1901 is equipment apparatus, fire apparatus. Then that's covered in a further chapter. But page 3, chapter 3, page 70. Okay. Question 17. The third step in the community risk reduction plan is, and you should have seen that on chapter 3, page 70, and it is response. So if you go to page 70, it is on the $1,500. I'll get that for you. Community risk reduction planning, and it says step 1 is the preparation, step 2 is mitigation, step 3 is response, and step 4 is recovery. It's on that right-hand column, right in the middle of the page. Trying to find out where these are on the book so you can mark them. Question 18, a rapid self-sustaining oxidation process accompanied by heat and light in varying intensities is called fire. So that's in chapter 4. There's a lot of questions on exam out of chapter 4. It's important you understand the chemistry and physics. That's what is important for a firefighter, so that you know what you're dealing with. I give you a few questions out of the other chapters, but most, if you're familiar with the exam, remember the exam. There are quite a few questions out of chapter 4. That was chapter 4, page 78. What components make up the fire triangle? There is a big picture of that right in your chapter 4 on page 78 and 79. I'm trying to go over that to find that for you. Top left-hand side of page 79, figure 4-1 tells you exactly what's there. It's important you understand that, and you understand what the tetrahedron is. Remember, you have the chemical reaction that makes up the tetrahedron, okay? You will see these questions, that question more than likely in a different format on the final. The 3 states of fuel, you need to know those as well. You'll probably see something along that line on your final as well. And they are solids, liquids, and gases. And open a question up for you. And that's on page 80, chapter 4. Question 21. According to the text, if a fire burns intensely, it's called continuity. Is that a true-false question? I believe it is, and that is false. And continuity refers to the groupings over a prescribed area. It's wildland firefighting, a term used in wildland firefighting. We have some students in this class who are interested in wildland firefighting. I put that specifically in there for them. That was on page 81. The fuel can be arranged vertically, horizontally, or both. And it helps. Continuity means there's no break in the fire. It allows the fire to keep moving continuously as it's spreading. 22, when a fuel is brought to the temperature at which it continues combustion without any external heat source, input of heat, and becomes self-sustaining, it has reached its ignition temperature. And that is on, again, chapter 4, page 80. And let's get there. It's in the definitions, right-hand column, about the first paragraph, on down, about halfway down that paragraph. You need to understand that you need to spend a lot of time in chapter 4. You will see a lot of those things again as we move through the text, specifically on the final. I'll be giving you quite a few questions out of chapter 4. It's important you understand all those definitions and the what they mean. Question 23, what are the two categories of gases? Several put down poisonous and non-poisonous, and yes, those are true. Those are what gases can be, but there's two categories, and they're basically flammable and non-flammable. And then under those, you'll have other subcategories. And that was on page 85 in chapter 4. And if you want me to find that for you and show you where that is, that's going to be right there under classifications of gases. And it gives gases can be categorized as flammable and non-flammable. Okay. Left-hand column, second paragraph, you'll see it. 24, there are several sources of heat: chemical, mechanical, electrical, and nuclear. That's a true false question. And the answer on that would have been, what do you think? True. Okay, that's on page 85 out of chapter 4. Convection is a transfer of heat through a solid medium. That is a true false question. That's false. That would be conduction is a transfer of heat through a solid medium. Convection is through like wind currents. Okay. And I think that was on page 86. And there it is. It is heat transfer, and it tells you conduction, convection, and radiation. And sometimes there's even some people even say there's a fourth classification called direct flame, but the text doesn't spend a whole lot of time on that. And I'm not going to try and trick you with something like that one. You just need to understand those three primary sources of heat transfer. Question 26. The transfer of heat by waves of energy is called radiation. We get that when we open that up for you. Excuse me. That's on page 86 as well. And where that is the third item there is heat transfer, conduction, convection, and radiation. And radiation says this is a transfer of heat by wavelengths of energy. We get our source of heat from the sun through radiation. The blank is designed to standardize the participation of departments and agencies at the government levels, non-government organizations, and organizations in the private sector to work together. That's question number 27. And if you took the IS courses, you should know that's the National Incident Management System. It's chapter 5, I believe, page 106, I believe. Let me make sure I'm not misleading you. Yeah, 106, left-hand column, very first paragraph there, National Incident Management System. You need to understand that one. You need to understand ICS, which 100 and 200. You need to understand NIMS, the National Incident Management System, and the National Response Framework. You need to know what those are. You'll see those again as we move through the course, specifically on your final. When the contents of a room are brought to their ignition temperature and sufficient oxygen is present, blank can occur. What do y'all think that is? It's not a backdraft. What do you think? It's fatal to firefighters. It's a flashover. We cannot survive in those environments as you move through your career into your training. In the academy, we have a flashover chamber. If you come on the 29th for the training day, you'll see the flashover chamber. We'll show it to you on the campus. But you will actually be put in there. The firefighters will burn some pallets, Class A material, and they'll create the conditions for flashover so you can see when you're inside that environment what a pre-flashover environment looks like. That gives you an understanding so that when you're inside of a structure in real life and you see those signs, that you'll be able to take action that save yourself or your partners. And or get out. You can't survive if you're in there when that occurs. That's in chapter 5, page 89. Temperatures exceed 1,000 degrees, our gear will not hold up to that. Okay, let's see, question 29. It's a matching proper term. A lot of y'all didn't get this correct, and I don't understand it. Matching, they're direct definitions out of the book. So if you look up either in the index or if you read the chapters, you should have been able to match those up. So I won't spend a lot of time on that question. You can still go through your text and look up boiling point, gas, lower explosive limit, smoldering decay phase, black fire, backdraft, flashover, free burning stage, growth stage, and incipient phase. And you need to really know those definitions. You will see definitions like that again on the final. You got to read the text so that you know where to find those things. And you ought to be able to get them right off the top of your head if you've read the text. Question 30, carbon monoxide is a byproduct of incomplete combustion. Excuse me, that's a true false question. That's true, it is. It's a incomplete combustion. Complete combustion leaves you what? Water vapor, hydrogen. Okay, so, and oxygen. Let's see, that's on chapter 4, page 80 is going to be your answer to that one. And let me get there for you. Chapter 4, page 80. It goes into great detail on that one. Let me find it. Where's it at? I got it marked on there. It's the very top of the page. This gives us the byproducts of incomplete combustion, such as smoke, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and other fire gases. It's the very, very top of the page. Question 30, combustion is considered an exothermic reaction. You need to understand the difference between exothermic and endothermic. You will see that on your final. I'm just letting you know right now, and that's a true question. Exothermic puts off heat, endothermic absorbs heat. And so you need to know that if I put an ice cube in a glass of warm water, is it ice cube exothermic or endothermic? It's absorbing heat because it's colder than the surrounding water. So it's absorbing that heat, and that would be an endothermic reaction. That is explained on page 78, chapter 4. Question 32, match the fire classification with proper definitions. You need to go back through and look at nobody missed this because it was big text in your book. I mean, in your book, nobody missed it. And so I was proud off of that, but that was kind of a gimme question. It's in there, A, B, C, D, and K. Y'all did good on that question. Question number 33, fuels that mix with water can be diluted to the point they're no longer burned. That is true. And give me an example. The text gives you an example of alcohol, and that's on page 82, I believe. Yeah, miscibility. It's on liquid fuels on page 82, right-hand column. It's fuels that mix with water can be diluted to the point that they will no longer burn. An example of this would be alcohol. That's important to note when you're on fires, and you got to know what you're fighting with and how you can put the fire out. I can dilute it, I can smother it, I can cool it. Different ways you can do it. That's why the triangle is important. Remember, you got heat, oxygen, fuel. So I can reduce the heat, remove the oxygen, or I can remove the fuel, separate it from the fire, and then it doesn't burn. And so there are different ways you can put it out, but that's important. The tetrahedron, the chemical reaction part of it, you can use like halon and stuff like that, chemicals, dry chemical extinguishers that will break down the fire at a different level, the chemical reaction. Question went on. 34. The method used to assess flame spread and smoke density and is mandated for many commercial buildings is the Steiner tunnel test. I want you to remember that. And I want you to understand it because you're going to see that question again. You might see it a little bit different, but as you move through your career and you move into code enforcement, it's important to understand when you go into like hotels. The curtains in hotels are supposed to have a label on it. It's from ASTME, that American Society of Testing and Mechanical Engineers and stuff like that test that stuff, and they'll take a one strip piece of a 12-inch long strip of material, ignite it, and they watch how fast the flame spreads up it. So a lot of commercial businesses, big ones, they have to have that label on their material hanging up, wall coverings, curtains, even their decorative plants, those fake trees and stuff they have, they're supposed to have a UL listing or an ASTM label on it, EM label on it to show they're fire retardant. And if they're not supposed to be in there. Okay. And so the standard tunnel test is what engineers use to determine that. What page was that on? Let me find out for you. That was on page 82, chapter 4. Okay. Let's see. Update that question. And then 35, gasoline has a specific gravity of 0.72 to 0.76 at 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Will not float on water. That was a true or false question. And that's false because gasoline will float on water. If you remember specific gravity, anything less than 1 will float. Anything heavier than 1, anything more than 1 will sink. And that's important, again, how you fight fires. Flammable liquids that with a specific gravity less than 1, we usually roll foam, AFFF on top of that because it's on top of foam. Also, when you capture the material for an industrial site or something like that, you're capturing your runoff. How you can get the water out of there to keep it from all just flowing out down the creek is you can do an overhead dam or an overflow dam or an underflow dam based on the specific gravity of the chemical that's in there. And we'll talk about that later on if you take the hazmat class. Question 35, I'm sorry, question 36. Community expresses its assessment or perceived threat of its overall fire risk through its resources, the resources it's willing to commit to the fire department. That is true. It's on page 66, chapter 3. Obviously, here in the Metroplex, we're not too worried about hurricanes. Our big threats are fire, wind events like tornadoes, shear winds coming off, thunderstorm, hazardous materials incidents on the highways. So we focus a lot of our stuff on that. And so that's how we do it in the cities. If they don't perceive a fire threat in their community, then they'll allocate resources to police department or parks, whatever it is that they want to do. So that helps during the budget process by doing an assessment of their community and what their needs are. Let's see. Which quasi-governmental agency is listed in the National Response Plan? That was a no-brainer. If y'all were reading the text and those different organizations that help, everybody knows the Red Cross, and they are listed in the National Response Plan. They run a lot of shelters and provide a lot of a recovery type of support during natural disasters. They're a fantastic organization and do good work, as do the others that are involved, but they're the one that's listed specifically in the National Response Plan. People like the Texas Baptist Men can feed 10,000 people a day. They have kitchens that they can set up. They're housed out in Mesquite over off of Big Town Boulevard, and they have kitchens that can set up and run independently of any power. They provide all their own power and water and everything, and they can feed up to 10,000 meals a day. And so all those people are vital to large-scale disasters. Underwriters Laboratory promotes public safety through scientific investigation of various materials in regard to the hazard they present by their use. That was a true-false question. And it was true, they do. There's an interesting YouTube video. You can kind of Google that stuff and look at the Underwriters Laboratory's testing facilities. It is amazing. Those guys get paid a lot of money to tear things up, test them. It's a cool thing. Another area of public safety, if you're interested in being an engineer or being the non-response side of it, but being more on the prevention side of it, you can go to work for UL doing stuff like that. Question 39, blank provides a one-call notification service for hazardous materials emergencies. A lot of y'all kind of missed that one. And the key on that one was the one-call notification. Chemtrec does help us as responders on hazmat incidents, but they don't make notification to other agencies. That's going to be the NRC, the National Response Center, staffed by the Coast Guard. I've used them several times. And what you do is, as an incident commander or hazmat coordinator, you'll call them usually kind of after the incident or somewhere towards the middle of it, about releases going into waterways. They'll notify the TNRCC, the EPA, Coast Guard, they just make all those notifications for you. And it makes it really easy for commands. You don't have to worry about that. That's in chapter 5, page 104. Matching, again, the organization with its role. Matching, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here because we just don't have time, but the ISO, National Safety Council, NFPA, and FEMA, those are all in the book. Read that chapter. Again, it's in chapter 5, I believe it was. Yeah, chapter 5, and you can go through there and look at those. You kind of want to be familiar with those, or even if you don't become a firefighter or public safety, as a citizen, it's important those organizations are out there supporting your community in different ways. And behind the scenes support. Miscibility, we covered a little while ago. Mixable in water is the ability of a substance to be mixed with water, and most flammable liquids are unmiscible with water. That was on page, chapter 4, page 82. You need to look at that one again, so it's true. Page, I'm sorry, where are we at now? Ability, I've lost. Okay, gasoline vapors will rise. Is that true or false? Anybody know? It's false. Gasoline vapors are heavier than air. Not specific gravity, we're talking about the vapors themselves. I'm not talking about the liquid where they're afloat, we're talking about the vapors. And they hang close to the ground. That's why at your gas stations they have those signs, don't smoke, turn off your engines. Static electricity from your polyester pants or dress when you slide out of your car. You get that static electricity spark on heat. Still, no wind, calm days with high humidity. The vapors will kind of linger close to the ground and not spread out. On a windy day, it's not too much an issue. On days when it's kind of warm out, then they'll kind of spread out even more. But humidity has a big factor on it because it makes the hair heavier, which holds that stuff even down lower to the ground. And so you got to read that on chapter 4, page 83. Okay. So remember, gasoline vapors hang low to the ground. If you've ever started a campfire or a bonfire and you throw a cup of gasoline out there and then you throw a match in it, generally you're the one standing right in the middle of the flames if you let it sit there before you throw your match in it, because it'll roll all up on your legs and your feet and everything. So you better be careful, but that's how a lot of people get caught on fire. So I don't recommend doing that. If you want to use something to start a bonfire, that's why I have charcoal lighter fluid, stuff like that. Don't use gasoline. Match the term with the correct definition on question 43. Again, definitions: vapor, pressure, flash point, flammable liquids, temperature, and heat. Look in your chapter. Again, that's in chapter 4. You need to look in there and make sure you understand those definitions. Spend a lot of time in chapter 4. Spend a lot of time in it. It's important. You're going to see a lot of stuff out there again in the final. Conduction, again, out of chapter 4. And that's a true false question. And it's true. It's through a solid medium. We just talked about it. Convection is air, radiation is heat waves, and conduction is through a solid medium. Okay. That's on page 86. Flashover is a stage of fire. A lot of y'all miss that. Flashover is not a stage of fire. Flashover is an event that occurs in the free burning stage of the fire. And I want to, what chapter? It's on page 89, chapter 4. Let me get to that because y'all really kind of missed that. I think the book isn't well written on that, but it tells you there's your incipient stage, your growth stage, free burning stage, and flashover is an event between free burning and your decay or smoldering phase. So flashover occurs as you've got a fire going in a room, and in that room, it's putting off radiant heat and conduction, all those things, convection, conduction, radiation, but it's putting off that radiant heat from that fire. It's like holding your hand in front of an oven. You feel the heat. Well, as that heat builds in that room, everything gets to its ignition temperature at one time. And you're going to see it to start to smoke, and you'll see it start to kind of roll on itself. And in the flashover chamber, you'll see that. And then you'll see the little snakes coming across, starting to ignite, and those combustible gases that are coming off of it. And then you're about to have a flashover. And so what happens then is all the contents in the room ignite at one time. And that's a flashover. And that is unsurvivable. And so it is not a stage. It's an event that occurs during the free burning stage. It is an event. Okay, so that's important to remember that. You're going to see that again because we really stress flashover. That's how important it is to firemen. 46, in the free burning stage, the accumulation of residual gases, confined area from time to time will ignite and sufficient oxygen is present, causing what to occur? The key there is from time to time. And so that's that rollover I was talking about just now. You're going to see little snakes coming out. And you'll see fires start to roll over, kind of roll, and then they'll go back, and then they'll roll again, and go, you know, as it burns up those gases. And that's a rollover. That's not a backdraft. It's not a flashover. That's kind of like getting close to a flashover phase. And it can even occur after a flashover, after it's really going good in the free burning phase. You'll see some of that occurring as well. But that's in page 89 in chapter 4. A lot of this will be, you'll see when you get out in the academy, you'll start to see some of those things and understand a little bit better, but you need to get a good grasp on it now. A smoke explosion, question 47, the smoke explosion and backdraft are the same. And that was true, and it's on page 4, chapter 4, page 90. And it explains that right back there on the very last sentence. The event is referred to as a backdraft or smoke explosion. And so you'll see that. I want you to read that chapter again, or that paragraph, make sure you understand that. Again, you'll see that probably on your file. 48, a situation where heavy, dense black smoke is being emitted by a fire is called blank and may be a sign of imminent, and we talked about that just a while ago. It's going to be a backdraft. I'm sorry, black fire and flashover. And that is going to be, let me find that page for you because several of y'all missed that as well. And I had other questions in the other class asked about it, and I had to go through the book and find it for them too. It is, let me find it. Bear with me. Boom, 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 boom. Page 80. It says a term that has only recently been officially recognized as black fire. This describes a situation where heavy, dense black smoke is being emitted by fire. The smoke will be of high velocity, high volume, turbulent, and extremely dense. It can also be a sign of imminent flashover. Page 80, the very top left side of that page, it explains that to you, okay? Question 49, air is comprised of 21% oxygen. I don't think any of y'all missed this. Remember, that's 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, and the rest of it's in, other gases, hydrogen, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, argon, numerous other gases make it up. But the greatest percentage of the air we breathe, or the smallest percentage, 21%. The rest of it is nitrogen, and then it's other gases. And that was on page 79. And let me tell you exactly what that is. That is going to be right there in the middle, oxidizer. Air is a mixture of approximately 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, and 1% other gases. Page 79, underneath the fire triangle. Question 50, blank. The blank rates the fire protection capabilities of jurisdiction. And that's going to be the ISO. And that was back in chapter 5. What page is that on? Chapter 5 talks about the ISO. It is going to be on page 104. Page 104, and that's important to note because you deal with that every day as a homeowner. Your fire department and water department are what determine your insurance rates for your city. Not all cities or jurisdictions use the ISO, or states use the ISO, but Texas does, and is run through the Texas Department of Insurance, and the ISO is run by a private company that goes around the United States, and they assess all the communities, develop these ratings, and then the states will either adopt that as their principle or not. And then some insurance companies won't even use it. They'll have their own standards for evaluating, but it makes it easier on the private companies. That's why a lot of them do it. Like State Farm, I don't think uses it, or is it Allstate? One of those two does not use it. They have their own rating system, but they're all basically the same. So you need to understand that. So you can increase your water capabilities, your city, your fire department, staffing, training, equipment,
reduce your response times, increase your code enforcement efforts. There's 10% or something like that you get for code enforcement, and all those things add up. Like Mesquite's a 1, Plano's a 1. I think there's only like a dozen or so cities in Texas that are 1s. The rest of them kind of average between a 3 and a 5, 3 and a 6. You know, it depends. Smaller jurisdictions will be 8s and 10s, and so you're going to pay out in the county. You might have, you might be paying double the insurance you would be paying in the city. So those are the 50 questions. I kind of went through and told you the pages they were on. Told you I've kind of stressed the importance of knowing Chapter 4 and understanding all the definitions. If you have any other questions about the exam, just send me an email and I'll get back with you. And I'll get this review posted in the discussions for you. You all have a blessed night, and stay busy on your reading of your material. And I shall talk to you later. Take care. Good night.